We're going to crack open one of the world's oldest books to find a hidden literary genius, one that connects something as simple as a bowl of stew to the grand sweep of history.
So let's be honest for a second. When you're reading a book like Genesis, sometimes you're flying along, and then bam, you hit these long, dense sections just filled with names and lineages. It can feel like you've just run into a wall.
And hey, you are not alone. This is a real comment from a reader online, and it totally captures a feeling a lot of us have had. It's so tempting to just skip those parts and get to the good stuff, right? But what if I told you those lists are actually the key to understanding the incredible design of the entire book, and that the clue to it all lies in one of the most famous sibling rivalries ever recorded, and it's all centered around one very fragrant meal? Okay, so it all kicks off with the story of Jacob and Esau, and a transaction so unbelievable it is echoed through the ages, trading an entire birthright for a single bowl of stew.
So picture this. The scene is super tense. Esau, the hunter, stumbles in from the field, totally exhausted and starving. His brother, Jacob, is cooking. The smell is just overwhelming, and Esau basically demands some. Well, Jacob sees his chance and makes this absolutely stunning counteroffer.
Now, you gotta understand, the birthright wasn't just some small perk. Back in ancient times, it was everything. It was the family name, the leadership of the entire clan, and a double portion of the inheritance. For these two, it also meant being the one to carry on the sacred covenant of their grandfather Abraham. Seriously, it was priceless.
So what on earth could possibly be in this stew that made it worth giving all that up? Well, based on historical research, it was probably this thick, hearty stew of red lentils and barley, flavored with these amazing earthy spices from the ancient Near East, like cumin and coriander. I mean, you can almost smell it, can't you? That rich, savory aroma that just drove Esau to make such a crazy decision.
So, the big question is, why would anyone make a trade like that? Well, to understand the deal, you have to understand the people making it. And as we are about to see, these two brothers could not have been more different. And wow, you can see the difference right away. Esau was the rugged outdoorsman, a real man's man, totally his father's favorite. Meanwhile, Jacob was the quiet homebody, his mother's favorite. One guy lived for the thrill of the moment, the other was a planner, you know? His very name even hinted at a more cunning nature. But here's where it gets really interesting. The original Hebrew word used to describe Jacob as mild, which is Tom, can also mean blameless or even complete. So this paints him as this really complex character, outwardly upright, but also a crafty strategist who knows exactly what he wants and how to get it.
So yeah, it's an amazing story, right? Full of family drama. But the way it's told, the specific details that are included, they all seem to point to something much bigger. There's a deliberate pattern hidden just beneath the surface. You see, the people who wrote Genesis were absolute masters of a really sophisticated literary technique, one that turns a simple story into a perfectly balanced work of art.
Okay, it's this really cool technique called chiasms. Think of it like a mirror, or maybe a narrative sandwich. You build up a series of events, let's call them A, B, C. You hit a major turning point right in the middle, and then you mirror those events in reverse order, C, B, A. And the most important message? It's always, always right in the center. And get this, the entire story of Jacob's life is a giant chiasm. Just look at this. It builds from his birth all the way to his central focal point. And notice how his initial fear of his brother Esau, which causes him to flee, is perfectly mirrored decades later by his fearful return to face him again. The whole narrative is built on this incredible symmetrical foundation. So you see, that moment with the stew? It's not random at all. It's the event that causes Jacob to fear Esau and run away. It's the first half of a structural pillar that the entire story rests on. It's deliberate. It's pure genius design.
Okay. So, if the stories are this meticulously crafted, what about those genealogies we talked about at the beginning? The parts that can feel like filler. Well, it turns out they're an absolutely crucial part of this grand design too.
Well, it turns out those lists aren't just lists. They are the actual scaffolding that holds the entire historical and theological story together. In fact, you could say these lists serve at least 5 huge functions. And man, they do some serious heavy lifting. They anchor these amazing stories in real history, showing a steady hand guiding things over generations. They prove that God's plan isn't derailed by flawed people. In fact, he kind of specializes in using them. And ultimately, these lists are the unbroken chain of evidence showing that promises get kept not just for one lifetime, but across centuries. So here's maybe the best way to think about it. The genealogies, they're like the architectural blueprint of a massive cathedral. They provide the structure, the foundation, the sheer scope of the project. And the stories of characters like Jacob and Esau, they're the breathtaking stained glass windows inside that structure, full of color, drama, and light. You absolutely need both to appreciate the genius of the whole design. So what's the takeaway from all this? The way these stories are built isn't just some ancient literary game. It carries a really profound message for us today. I mean, Esau's mistake is so timeless, it's almost painful. He totally exaggerated his immediate need. I'm about to die, all for a bowl of stew. He chose instant gratification over a lifelong, priceless inheritance. And really, how often do we do that? Trade something of lasting, maybe even spiritual value for a temporary physical comfort just because we can't.
And that's the genius of it. The very structure of Genesis is an argument against Esau's whole worldview. This careful, patient, symmetrical design, weaving together incredible stories and long genealogies, it shows a universe where things are unfolding according to a long-term plan. A plan where patience is a virtue, and every single detail, every name in those boring lists has a purpose.
It really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? If this much meaning and design is packed into the story of just one family, what other masterpieces, what other hidden patterns of purpose are just waiting there, right below the surface, ready for us to find?